Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 818, 818, June the 22nd, 2019, Saturday. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I do appreciate all the wonderful comments in the comments section. I do try to read them every day. I'm pretty busy these days and I don't always get a chance to respond to all the comments, but I certainly do try to read them all, and I certainly do appreciate all the kind words and support from all of you out there who tune in every day. Thanks so much. So I guess the big topic yesterday, I guess what everybody was talking about, of course, was Trump's decision not to attack the Iranians or counterattack, however you want to look at it. And of course, the big story is, well, they got within 10 minutes. And then Trump changed his mind, and it had to do with one thing for sure, possibly another thing that Trump mentioned when he was talking to, I think, Hannity. Of course, he says that they had everything, ready to go. They were getting ready to launch on 3 targets, and Trump at some point asked one of the generals how many people would be killed in they estimate would be killed, and he was told about 150. And then he said he thought about it and realized that that wasn't a very fair trade-off. We lose a drone. Yeah, it's a $100 million drone, but he said nobody was killed. And of course, if we bombed Iran, he said that we could be looking at 150 people killed, and he didn't think that was justified at that point. So then there was another thing that he mentioned, that maybe this was a rogue action on behalf of a field commander who launched on this drone, and that the order did not come from the highest authority of the government or the higher authorities in the government, that it came from some field level commander. I don't know if that's been verified or not. It's possible, but I don't know, maybe not, I don't know. But I guess so everyone's kind of giving their take on this. It kind of reminds me, it's like the old Mad Dog theory that Nixon had, that Henry Kissinger had given to Nixon, which is, we want the Chinese and the Russians to think you're a mad dog, that you're capable of, that you would consider or capable of launching a full-scale nuclear attack on either of them at any time for any reason. And for that reason, Kissinger used to tell Nixon, yeah, we want our planes to fly right into the cutting edge of Russian airspace, Chinese airspace. We want to rub wingtips with Russian MiGs. We want to sail into the closest we can get to the territorial waters of China and conduct war games and all these sorts of things. So Kissinger wanted Nixon to take on this sort of persona, or give this persona to the Russians and the Chinese, that he was some sort of a mad dog and that he was kind of unhinged, a little crazy. Now we know that Trump knows Kissinger and has talked to him many times, and we even hear that he sometimes privately consults with Kissinger. Kissinger's pretty damn old these days, man, so I don't know about all that. But that is certainly one thing. It might be part of Trump's strategy, and there may be a big strategy behind all this, but I'm kind of thinking not. I'm kind of thinking things are pretty much exactly what Trump is saying they are. It makes perfectly good sense to me. And just because Trump didn't hit Iran doesn't mean he won't. Or maybe he hasn't, but he hasn't done it yet. Maybe he's more interested in using this opportunity to get some sort of a negotiation or meeting or something with the Iranians. He'd rather negotiate or whatever than initiate something that could be a war. And I think Trump also understands how the deep state works, and that this could be a trick. And I think he's a little cautious, and it tells me that he doesn't totally trust the community of intelligence people and all those sorts of people, and I can understand why. Look what he's going through right now. I wouldn't have a lot of confidence in these people either. And if you go ahead with the strikes, it's possible that more things could happen. It's possible that other things could be set into motion by the deep state to get Trump into a war they would love to have, and a war that they know would certainly almost certainly destroy his presidency. So I think that there's probably some things also going on with Trump that he can't talk about that have to do with his concern and lack of trust, and some of the people around him, particularly in the intelligence community and the defense industry and things like that. I think he understands this very well, so I think he's being very cautious. He might have smelled a rat. There might have been something that came up that made him think twice about it. But either way, I really have no problem with the decision he made. As far as if he would have retaliated against Iran and hit 2 or 3 of their targets, I probably wouldn't have, freaked out over that either. I mean, they shot down a $100 million drone. If the intelligence that we're getting is correct, and I'm not 100% sure it is, because we've been lied to in the past. We were lied to in World War I about the attack on that American ship. We were lied to about the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which led to the Vietnam War, about that attack on an American ship. There have been too many of these types of things over the many years that you have to be skeptical. And I would love to say I could trust these intelligence people and defense intelligence people, but I just don't. I would be very, very suspicious and very cautious if I were the president. I was in his shoes. I certainly would be. And he knows there's nothing more they would love more than a war in Iran, and he also knows it would likely be the end of his presidency at that point. So I think it was probably a wise move on Trump's behalf. I think that we'll have to get farther down this particular road before we see whether or not this paid off. I expect the Iranians to gloat quite a bit. This is what they do. They're bad actors. There's no question about that. So there's a lot of bad guys in this deal. Trump's dealing with a lot of bad guys, and they're on both sides, and that's a difficult position to find yourself in. And I think Trump understands exactly where he is in the whole scenario. So I guess I'm not particularly been out of shape either way. I mean, had he struck a couple of targets inside Iran, I'd say, okay, well, you hit a $100 million drone, and if what we're being told is true, and it wasn't violating your airspace, then well, I mean, that's what you get. And if it was, I wouldn't be surprised either. If it was a lie, and in fact that drone was flying over. We do have past history, do we not? Do any of you remember the Gary Powers incident? The U-2 spy plane shot down spying on the Soviet Union. The Gary Powers U-2 spy plane was shot down over the Soviet Union. As soon as the event happened, the Eisenhower administration came out and denied that they even had spy planes or that they were over the Soviet Union. They said, oh, well, they must be talking about some sort of a NASA weather plane, and it must have drifted off course. And they went through an amazing set of exercises to try to run the fake propaganda. They even took an aircraft, a NASA plane, and painted the plane up like a NASA plane, and had a bunch of reporters go down and look at it and said, yeah, this is the plane we're talking about. It's one of these. It does a lot of weather stuff. It flies up there and takes it takes measurements of barometric pressure and various things. It was probably our NASA weather plane or whatever, and that's what we lost. We can't seem to find it. Of course, as you know from the story, if many of you followed the story, as it turns out, the Russians didn't say anything about the fact that they had the pilot. So they waited about 2 weeks, I think it was 9 days or something, for us to go to the UN and for Eisenhower and a bunch of American officials to make a bunch of statements denying all of it. And then after like 9 days, the Soviets went to the UN and produced the evidence. They had the pilot, Gary Powers. He was alive, and they had him. They had the plane, and they showed all the pictures of it, including the very, very high-tech camera. And so the Eisenhower administration was caught in a red-faced, bold-faced lie. And so we know that these types of things happen. We know that there's a lot of deceptions by the deep state. And they lie to presidents as much as they lie to you and I. They don't care. They don't see the difference. In fact, they probably lie to the president more than they lie to us. I think Trump's very suspicious of the people around him. I think he's very hesitant to pull the trigger on something, because once you pull that trigger and you launch those strikes, now you're pretty much turning everything over to your generals and your intelligence people. And from that point on, they're kind of running the show. They're just giving you advice at that point, and you have no idea what kind of plot they may have cooked up for you and what they could lead you into. Just like they tried to lead JFK into Vietnam, and he smelled the rat and blew the whistle and said, nah, I don't think so. And of course, you know, in the case of Lyndon Johnson in the Gulf of Tonkin, I don't know if Johnson knew that he was being snookered. My guess is he did, and he was part of the plot. But it's possible that he was snookered too. And we now know that that American warship was not in international waters in the Gulf of Tonkin. It was within 7 miles of the territorial coastline of North Vietnam. So we get lied to a lot in these sorts of situations, and I don't blame Trump one bit. So I'm not particularly, you know, overly worked up the fact that he didn't strike, and I wouldn't have been worked up if he did. So I think it's not that big a deal. I just think it's part of an ongoing process. Of course, we should expect this type of behavior from Iran, because Trump has really tightened the screws on them. They're feeling a lot of pain. Their economy shrunk by 4% last year. It's scheduled to set to shrink by estimated 6% more this year. They have inflation that's somewhere around 50%. I mean, there's a lot of issues there, and so they are, you know, acting the way people act when you're in that particular situation. They're kind of being backed into the corner. They're like a wounded animal backed into a corner, and they're going to lash out and do everything that they can. So I think that we should certainly be looking for this type of behavior by that particular group of folks in Iran. And you just have to, I think, just keep applying the pressure is probably the wise move. Iran doesn't present a real threat to us directly, militarily, or anything like that. Our allies in the region are perfectly well armed to defend themselves against them. And the big thing, of course, is you really don't want the Iranians to get hold of a nuke. I can't imagine anyone giving them one and expecting to read about it in the paper the next day. And the Iranians at this point have not tested a nuke. I think if they ever tested one, that would be it. I think they'd be hit. But at this point, they haven't even tested a nuke. They are developing the long-range, medium to long-range missiles, but they can go buy them on the open market. The Russians sell them a lot of advanced equipment, mostly for defensive purposes, and they pretty much stick to that. And I think that that's the key players you have to watch, is the people who might sell something to the Iranians that they could use. So I think Trump probably made the right call, and I'm not particularly been out of shape about it either way. So that's my thoughts on it. Now, NBC on their Good Morning show, I believe this was on Friday, either Thursday or Friday, on the NBC Good Morning America show, they did a report on the Biden-China-Ukraine scandal, which the mainstream media has been ignoring and ignoring and ignoring, despite the fact that it's so obvious and it's all over the place. I guess maybe they got to the point where they just simply couldn't stay off the story anymore. But it looks like NBC has finally broken rank with the other left-wing media organizations, and they did a fairly critical story on Biden and his shenanigans, and along with his son, in matters related to China and to Ukraine. And so the story focused on Biden's diplomatic work in China and Ukraine during the Obama years, and how lucrative business deals seem to fall into the lap of his son, Hunter Biden, from these countries every time Biden made a trip there. Just what we talked about yesterday, where I said, you know, Biden's son was constantly with him on these trips to China and Ukraine. And every time they would leave, Hunter Biden would come into a bunch of money or some position on some board or some sort of a business deal which involved him getting richer. And this guy's got a lot of problems. He didn't know anything about the energy business. He doesn't appear to know anything about anything except for snorting coke and hanging out with prostitutes. So, you know, I mean, it's a real scandal story for sure. And of course, we know that Biden, Obama had pretty much made Biden his point man for Russia, for Ukraine and China. Obama didn't like the Chinese very much. They didn't like him. He got dissed when he went there on one occasion. He just never got along with them. And so he said, yeah, Biden, you deal with these people. And the same with Ukraine. So that's why a lot of people are asking questions. But the best question that was asked by Rush Limbaugh when he reported on the fact that NBC had finally broken rank and did a critical story about Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and their corrupt behavior in regards to Ukraine and China. And Rush Limbaugh asked the question. Rush talked about this yesterday, and he said, somebody in the Democratic media complex has decided it's time to take Biden out. Somebody in the Democrat media complex has decided it's time to take Biden out. I wonder who that could be. Any ideas? Oh, I have one. I think I might know who might be right about now, beginning the process of taking out Biden. I think I know who may be behind that. As she looks at the field and realizes it's coming about time to start making her move. First, you got to take out the big dog, the guy leading the pack. I expect more attacks will be coming Biden's way, and he will be eliminated, leaving the two weaklings, Commie Bernie and Pocahontas. Liawatha. Who gave me that? I forget. I can't remember which one of you wonderful subscribers came up with that term, Liawatha, for Elizabeth Warren. Very good. Very, very good. Liawatha. Elizabeth Warren. Yep. Somebody is sitting back making their move. Well, it looks like a judge has now ordered a special prosecutor to examine the Jussie Smollett case, and not so much his case and what he did, but the that attorney general or prosecutor, I guess is who it was, the prosecutor, the Kim Fox woman, to investigate the investigation. So now there's a judge who's ordered a special prosecutor to investigate the investigation surrounding Jussie Smollett. And I'm not so sure that he is out of the woods yet. We know he's not coming back to that TV show. The ratings are in the tank, and I believe that they're going to end the show. I think I saw a report maybe a week or so ago, that they are not planning on bringing back Empire. And it was, I think, a very popular show at one point. I wouldn't know. I would never watch it, but that appears to be the case. So a lot of those people can't be happy with Jussie because of what he did. A lot of people are losing some pretty good paying acting jobs. And so I don't think it's over for Jussie yet. I think there's more to come, and I think they are going to find that the extraordinarily, let's say, unusual things were done in this case regarding Jussie Smollett. Well, let's see. Here's someone we haven't heard from in a long time. In fact, I thought she was dead. I guess she's not dead. It appears that Madonna, that's right, Madonna making a comeback. She must not be getting enough attention. She must have a new project coming out or something. She needs a little publicity. And so she comes out and makes what she normally does, some crazy, outrageous statement. And she says in a statement here this past couple of days ago, she says, Jesus would agree with women having abortions. Jesus would agree with women having abortions. Now, I would not want to say what Jesus would have thought about anything, really. Didn't know the guy. It was a couple thousand years ago. Not really sure what they did about abortions back then, but just something in my gut tells me it, not even talking about Jesus, but just people in general back in those days. I don't know that they voluntarily had abortions. They probably had miscarriages, deaths, things like that, children born dead and things like that. But I don't know that they back in those days would have had abortions. But this is the same idiot nutcase left-wing crazy person who once said that she found these images of Jesus on the cross as being very sexual. They were turn-ons. She was turned on by Jesus on the cross. So we're talking about a very, very sick person. And of course she's a Democrat. So there you go. Madonna, Jesus would agree with women having abortions, and she finds that Jesus on the cross as being, sexually interesting at the very least. So this is a very sick woman. And I thought she was gone. I thought we'd heard the last of her after her speech in Washington about dreaming about blowing up the White House. I thought that would be the end of her, but I guess she's back. I think she got a visit from the Secret Service. Right now, she needs a visit from a psychiatrist. Probably needs a rubber room and a straitjacket as well. I think she moved out of the country or something. I don't know. But unfortunately, Madonna's back. Goodness. Well, we have Commie Bernie saying that Warren, Liawatha, Chief Spreading Bull, Elizabeth Warren, Commie Bernie is saying that Warren surging past him in the polls is because she is a woman. Bernie's saying that Warren surging past him in the polls is because she is a woman? I don't know about you, but that sounds a little sexist. Sounds sexist, misogynist, homophobic to me. That's right. Commie Bernie. Saying that Warren's surging past him because of her sex, because she's a woman. That sounds very sexist to me. Bernie's an idiot. First of all, I predicted a long time ago that Bernie would never see the same type of reaction he got in 2016 because, quite honestly, he sold out many of his supporters, and many of them left him. Some of them are now Trump supporters. Many of them voted for Jill Stein. Some of them stayed home. So I knew Bernie would, he was lightning in a bottle. He had his one opportunity, and he blew it. And when the time came to stand up for himself and his supporters, he did neither. Plus, the Democratic Party is not going to allow Bernie to be the nominee. They'll cheat him every which way from Sunday to make sure he is not. They're not going to let Bernie be the nominee. The big money donors, the people who run the Democratic Party, screwed Bernie in 2016, and he's too damn stupid to realize that they will screw him again in 2020. And if he was still alive and ran again in 2024, they'd do it to him again in 2028 and beyond. Bernie is too stupid to have figured out that the establishment is not going to let him have the nomination. He hasn't figured that out yet. Or else he has figured that out, and he doesn't give a damn because he's doing exactly what I suggested he was doing a long time ago. He's putting together the Bernie retirement plan. He only wants to build his donor list so that he can retire from the Senate after this campaign and sell his donor list for about $20 million. I think that's his $20 million. I think this entire campaign he's running is nothing more than his retirement plan to cash out his donor list. That's what I think. Hillary, look how much she got for her donor list. I think it was like $13 million or something. Well, the loony left attacking Trump, these so-called legal experts that go on MSNBC and CNN and all those people have been saying for the past week after Trump's comments to George Stephanopoulos about the fact that he would take the call. We have all these so-called experts saying that accepting unsolicited intelligence from a foreign source is a crime and often, an offense that should result in impeachment. think very carefully about those words, each of those words that they are saying. This is a direct, actual word-for-word quote from one of these talking head so-called legal analysts on MSNBC. Accepting unsolicited intelligence from a foreign source is a crime. Has anyone ever heard of a guy named Alexander Down the Hatch Downer? Down the Hatch Downer produced for the U.S. government unsolicited intelligence. He is a foreign source. Christopher Steele solicited intelligence. He was a foreign source. And you can go on and on and on. So, I'm not really sure what these people were thinking, or if they are thinking before they go on and say these things. But if you apply the standards for a lot of the things they're saying to what we saw happen in Spygate, they're self-incriminating. I mean, these are self-owning situations that they're getting themselves involved in. And I certainly hope that when the stuff hits the fan, that someone has clips of these characters, these so-called experts, so we can play their words right back for them and feed them right back into their face. Because now they have made this statement, and they're going to have to live with it and die with it, because it's going to come back and bite them big time. Big time. Yes, Brian Kilmeade and Sean Hannity having major meltdowns because Trump did not strike Iran. The neocons are beside themselves. The media look like fools because the night before they were talking about how Trump was going to get us in this war with Iran. Then when he decides not to do the strike, then they come out the next day and say, well, he's weak. You just can't win with the loony left. So, I'm looking at where we are in this Spygate investigation. We don't know a lot, and that's good, because what it tells us is that Durham must have a pretty hard and fast rule: no leaking. No leaking. We're not getting leaks out of Durham's investigation, so he must run a pretty tight ship. And I was thinking back, and it's not because he's not being aggressive and not doing things, because we're hearing he is, and we understand that he communicates 2 to 3 times per week with Barr on the issue. I'm sure Barr wants regular progress reports. I was thinking back to that interview that Barr did right after he named John Durham, and the word that he used to describe Durham when he first announced that he had appointed him, the word that he used to describe Durham was tenacious. Tenacious. He's a hard charger, and that's why Barr put him in there. But he's also known for being very, very quiet. He doesn't talk to the media, and he doesn't tolerate leaks. So I don't worry that that he isn't busy and getting after it and taking care of business. I'm sure that he is. We just have to be patient, which is hard. We've been patient for a long time. But I'm thinking, what is the next major shoe to drop? We're learning a lot of things. We've learned a lot of things over the past couple of years. But the thing that I am most interested in, I guess, me personally, is that we have these coup plotters, and we know that these coup plotters had to be in some way, shape, or form communicating with one another. And I remember that email, or that text between Peter's Been Stroking Us and Loose Lisa Page, where the day after the election, and Peter's Been Stroking Us tells Loose Lisa Page that this meeting, that they're going to have this meeting, and Peter's Been Stroking Us says, well, I guess this is the first meeting of the first official meeting of the secret society. The secret society. So clearly there was a cabal, and you can call it a secret society, you can call it whatever you want to call it, but clearly there was a cabal. That means there was a coordinated group of individuals striving to reach some objective. it is impossible to have a group of individuals working together to achieve an objective without some communication. So what I am looking for, and I think would be the next huge bombshell, and something I think that's probably out there, and something that I think is the next thing I would like to see discovered, is the communications between the plotters. And obviously they wouldn't be communicating in the plane or anything like that. They would be using some sort of system to communicate with one another, and I doubt it would be, regular email or anything like that. But again, these people have made a lot of mistakes. So then I'm thinking about the fact that we learned that we had certain people in the Obama administration who had aliases. And these aliases were not being used on their own private systems or anything. They were actually being used on government systems. So instead of using their, setting up their own private servers like the Rotten Reverend Clinton, they communicated on government systems, but they did so using aliases. And we understand that some of these people had multiple aliases, including Barack Hussein Obama. We know that Loretta Lynch had an alias. She used Elizabeth Carlyle. And we know that she used that Elizabeth Carlyle alias through an official government email. And we know that when she was having conversations about the tarmac meeting with Slick Willie, she was using this alias to discuss that. She didn't do it on a regular account. She used her alias account. We also know that Eric Holder used the alias as well. He used the alias Lou Alcindor. Many of you are probably not old enough to remember Lou Alcindor. Lou Alcindor was the actual real birth name of someone named Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Center for the Lakers. Lois Lerner had her own alias. Toby Miles was the alias used by Lois Lerner. So I believe that it is possible and probably likely that these coup plotters had to be communicating in some way, and I think that they were probably doing it using aliases, maybe right on government systems. Using non-government systems would draw attention to you. It would be illegal. It could create a lot of problems, and as we can see with the Rotten Reverend Clinton. The best thing to do would be to use government servers, but to use aliases, knowing good and well that you control the situation. But now, and they believe they would control the situation going forward, because they never thought Trump would win. So it's possible that they would have used government communications. They just would have used aliases. And there are so many email accounts within the government, you have a hell of a hard time determining, what you're going to do. Go through every single email account in the U.S. government. It would be very, very difficult. It would be much more difficult to track something like that than it would be to track back to an illegal server, if these people had illegal servers. And we still have that little ham radio issue with Nelly. That's what I think will be the next major big bombshell to drop, is that there was a clandestine system for communicating between the coup plotters, and maybe Mr. Durham will find it. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you guys. Bye.